I think we can probably just get started talking about the structure of the piece.
Okay.
And I think in that process, we'll also look at just a couple of little things in terms of playing that maybe you could sort of work on this week.
Okay.
So when I look at a piece of music, I always want to start with the big form, the overall form of the piece. And to model the composition as well, it's going to be really important. So the form of the form of the piece, do you know a little bit about form and stuff? Would you be able to sort of label what the form of this piece is?
I would say no.
Okay, no worries. So there are two sections, but at the end of the second section it says DC da capo, which means from the start.
Right.
So that means it's back to the start. So it's ABA. That's the form of the piece, ABA,
Yep.
and that's called ternary form. So the overall form ABA. The common thing, part of what's important about form is to have contrast. So the B section contrasts the A section, and the easiest way to do that is with modulation, changing key.
Mm-hmm.
So in this case, it starts out. Do you know what keys the A section and the B section are in?
It looks like E minor, E
Good.
major.
Yeah, exactly. Fantastic. E minor and E major. So in this case, it's called the parallel major, E major and E minor. So that has a dramatic effect on the character and emotion of each section. So we see the accents on the second beat.
Yep.
Quite frequent in the first three measures here. They're not done. So in the fourth measure, we have an accent on the first beat. So there's a shift there, which is important to consider. We also have that ornament.
Yep.
There. In this edition, for the next 4 bars, there is no accent marking, but I think it's implied. I think those would be just as the start. That's a pretty common thing to do. Sometimes if something repeats exactly, they won't always put in all the details.
Right.
Could you play the A section again? And maybe if we could first just keep in mind the accents. And maybe just the accents, if we could just make those really clear and obvious.
Sure.
Yeah, so sorry to stop you already, but if you could try not to accent the high notes so much. So
okay.
Like,
okay. Oops.
Yeah, nice, great job. That's tricky to control because when you have high notes, they tend to create an accent by default. So it takes quite a bit of control to sort of stop that from happening. Yeah.
So those tend to come in quieter on those high notes.
Yes, yeah, I think so. Come in quieter on those high notes. It sounds like I couldn't quite see your right hand, but you might want to think about where you place your rest strokes.
Okay.
So you might want to just save your rest stroke for the accented beats, and that will help. I always try to find a musical purpose for, techniques like slurs and rest strokes and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
The slur can also help as well. If you can actually, I think one of the maybe misconceptions about slurs today is that they should be as even as possible. But the actual purpose of a slur is to create a strong, weak accent, just like in speech with strong, weak syllables.
Mm-hmm.
So you can actually be very light with the second note of the slur. Something like that.
Yeah, that makes
instead
sense.
of trying to get too much emphasis on the second note. So
Yep.
that's this. All of this stuff is going to be important for composing too. You know, like when you use slurs, how you use slurs, why use a slur.
Yep.
Very important. I think part of why it's on the first beat is to sort of unaccent it a little bit. That unaccent that beat a little bit. You know, if you pluck that, that has a very different effect.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
It also has a kind of a sighing gesture to it. I think that's probably the most important. You know, getting past all the sort of calamities.
Yep.
I think it's that sighing gesture. Yeah. And then that landing on the second beat, it really has kind of a very, like almost a sub. Yeah. It's beautiful. That's what makes. I mean, it's just such a beautiful. Tariga's pieces they're so poetic.
Yeah.
I'm always struck at how poetic they are. You just get deeper and deeper and deeper into it. Yeah. So we have this one on the F sharp. That would be the name of it technically is an upper mordant. Is when you go off the note and then back down.
Yep.
A lower mordant would be below the note and back up. And then this one here we have is called a slide or a glissade or a glissando. It's really important with the slides to keep your finger keep the pressure down of your finger on the string so that you really get the notes in between.
Yeah.
In between the indicated notes that you really does that make sense?
Absolutely. Now that's definitely an important difference from the version I'm looking at, because those notes are actually supposed to be played on the second string, and that was a question I had because
yeah,
it was not. Your version makes a lot more sense in how that would be played.
Right. Yeah. So if it's on the second string, I don't think you can do the slide then, right?
No, and there is no slide indicator.
There you go. Well,
Yeah.
so that's a really important. I mean, part of the style is I think these ornaments really contribute or they're a really key aspect of the style.
Yeah.
Because I've studied a lot of method books and they're crazy with ornaments, like just full of ornament exercises. Like sometimes they have like studies where they're ornamenting every single note, and I think they loved ornaments. I think they loved effects like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a really important one. Yeah. Great. Good to catch that. And then I guess the last one is the descending slide here. So the same kind of idea. Is that in your edition as well?
Yeah, that is in it.
Okay, cool. So same sort of thing. Wait, so if you can try to keep so we hear those notes in between. Yeah.
Yep.
That's and you can also slow down at that point, so you can really make a beautiful gesture out of the ornament. In that case, do you have a ritardando in your?
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
Cool. The last thing we could talk about is the dynamics, other dynamics here, because it is also quite detailed, and it sounds like it might be different to at least that piano is one different marking. There might be some others, I'm not sure. So we have piano for the first 4 bars, and then in the 4th bar we have a slight crescendo.
Yep.
Up to here, and that's really interesting. He saves the piano for there, so I'd probably say there's maybe the implication of a decrescendo through that measure, even though it's not written in.
Yeah, it is written in.
I don't think it makes. It is written. Okay, I think that's a good marking. I think that's a sensible sort of marking, because it doesn't really make sense to be loud and then suddenly soft here.
Yep.
One of the things that is I can talk about in regards to dynamics and melody. There's definitely a relationship between melody and dynamics. So you can summarize it simply by saying to follow the shape of the line. So if the melody is descending, it's usually a decrescendo, and if it's ascending, it's a crescendo. So in this case, this melody is rising up here, and that's the justification. That's sort of the reason for the crescendo. He didn't have to mark it in. You could actually, if you asked a musician of the time, what to do there, they would have said crescendo because the melody's rising. It's just it's a pretty straightforward, logical way to think about dynamics.
Yeah.
But it does affect, melody is really important, that there is a sort of a balance and a contrast and a variety of melody used. There's climaxes, peaks, and falls, and that kind of thing. So that's going to be an important consideration for the melody. But let's see if we can do that in your playing. See if we can, even though it's marked piano at the start, I would say that the first 3 bars descend. So you could actually get a little bit softer. Each one could get just a tiny bit softer.
Yep.
This one and then that one. And one really neat way to do that is not necessarily by pure volume, but by color, changing the color slightly, just getting a little bit closer to the fretboard, plucking a little closer to the fretboard for that one, a little bit closer to the fretboard for that one. This one has an accent at the start, so I think you can already start to get a bit stronger. So you should wind up with something, I think, something like. Let me get my video back on so you can see how I'm moving my hand for each. So I'm sort of starting. Have you got my video now?
Yep, absolutely.
Yep. So I'm sort of starting maybe like halfway between the sound rosette and the fretboard.
Yep.
And then. Right.
Yep. And then what is a mazurka? Is a kind of dance, right?
Yeah, it's a Polish dance, which is in triple meter in 3/4 time, and it tends to have the thing that it's similar to a waltz, but it's a little bit different. It tends to be sadder in character. It tends to have a sort of a sad character to it, and it also tends to accent the second or third beats quite a lot. Or the accents shift a little. It's never like predictable. It just sort of shifts around a little bit. Sometimes it's the first, sometimes it's the second, sometimes it's the third. Whereas a waltz is very much like in 3 with an accent on the first beat, and tends to be a bit more lively. So that's the sort of general character of a mazurka. And Chopin is probably the champion of mazurkas in classical music, and Tárrega was really influenced by Chopin. Tárrega actually transcribed a lot of Chopin's music, including some mazurkas. So there's definitely some sort of residues of Chopin in this mazurka. Yeah.